Friends, so we are editing my second book, Dying with Regrets. So let's pick up from where we left off last time. So in the last episode we left off at the part where I said I was going down a deep downhill spiral of depression, where I was so desperate to find what I thought was happiness, I did turn to drink and drugs. However, this is the part where we start talking about how I reached out for help and how I started to get out of the other side. So let's go and edit this next chapter, which is called Reaching Out for Help. After yet another weekend went by wasted on drink and drugs, I felt the urgent need to call my doctor and book an appointment to talk about how bad I was feeling. The day I left work to drive over to see the doctor, I was overwhelmed with many different emotions as I was overthinking what I should do and say once I was finally there. I also believed that she probably wouldn't even understand me or understand what I was currently going through. I didn't really want to go, but on the other hand, I didn't really want to stay in the same position. I really didn't know what to do. I was sat in the waiting room staring at the wall, whilst thought after thought washed around in my mind of what I should say and how I should say it. But then, suddenly, my name was called. I sheepishly walked in and sat in front of the doctor, who I had never seen before. Right away I felt as if she was time-bound and I had to be quick. So as soon as she asked why I was visiting, I instantly blurted out everything that had been bottled up inside me for many months previously even. But she soon stopped me, which made me feel as if she didn't even want to hear what I had to say. And before you know it, she told me that I was depressed, and she quickly pushed that prescription across the desk. I didn't really know much about antidepressants or how they worked, so she explained that they would make me feel worse before hopefully making me feel better. But in that moment, I felt as if I was already at rock bottom, and wasn't sure if there was any lower I could go before I did something that my future self would have really regretted. Swiftly moving on, she told me that I didn't have to take them if I didn't want to, and that the choice was completely mine. Great. The person who couldn't make decisions in that moment now had another big decision to make. I remember driving back to work with that prescription for those dreaded antidepressants sat on the passenger seat, staring me right in the face. After returning to work, I discussed with my colleagues whether I should get these tablets or not. And I did the same with my parents once I got back home too. But to conclude, the decision was ultimately mine and mine alone. After a handful of days had passed by, I felt a little better after opening up to a selective few individuals about how I truly felt. However, I still wasn't feeling too great and believed I hadn't yet exhausted all avenues, so I decided to put myself back in for yet another appointment at the doctor's. I managed to get another appointment for the next week, and after another alcohol and cocaine fueled weekend went by, I found myself back in the same waiting room, sat staring at that very same wall once more. I was then called back in to see the same doctor for the second time, so I walked in and sat down, and literally told her that I was so scared to take the antidepressants, as I believed that if I felt any worse, I would probably end up taking my own life. She just sat and stared at me, so I pleaded with her. There must be another option. Is there not somebody who I could just talk to? And that's when she gave me the option to try cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, which most people know it as. She told me that I had to be put on the waiting list, which would take a few more weeks, but I actually felt a bit better. For a brief moment, as I now had something which I could focus on and look forward to. However, during this period, I felt myself hit real rock bottom. I remember opening my eyes every morning and shouting the words, "Fuck you," because in all honesty I was pretty pissed off that I woke up. But after a few extremely challenging weeks went by, it was now time for my first CBT call. I was offered to do these in person, but I decided not to, as it would mean leaving work early for a number of weeks, and I felt that it was bad for the company. So I decided to do over-the-phone sessions sat in my car, which had no air conditioning, whilst the windows were all the way up. This was so no one else could hear, and this was right in the middle of the red-hot summer heat. It was like being sat in a sauna. On my first hour-long CBT call, I felt another huge weight drop off my shoulders, and I was able to get a whole lot off my chest, which made me feel much better. But sadly, as each week went by, I began to feel worse. The reason I believe I felt worse was because the CBT calls seemed to be very scripted, and any time I would deviate off track, I felt the counsellor was immediately going back to the script with no sign of empathy for what I was trying to explain, and didn't allow me the time or space to get things off my chest. I soon started feeling worse after each call, so decided to lie my way out of this. One lunchtime, I told the young lady that I was miraculously feeling better than ever before, and that I didn't need any further sessions. That very same weekend, I prepared to take my own life. Next chapter is called Light at the End of the Tunnel. Many months of mental misery had gone by, and I was sat sloped on the sofa crying my eyes out. I was suffering all morning. I didn't eat, I didn't drink. All I wanted at that very moment in time was for all the pain to finally end. I had all these horrible thoughts bouncing around my brain, telling me how I would never be happy again, and how I'd be better off dead. The truth is that death, for me, in this moment, was in fact a desired destination. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but was just too scared to go ahead and actually do it. I had the classic shoulder angel in one ear and the shoulder devil in the other. That little fucker was prodding me, saying, "Go on, do it, don't be a pussy." And the angel was constantly reminding me that my biggest fear was death, and how I would leave absolute carnage behind if I was to go through with it. Yet again, I couldn't make a decision and was sat procrastinating. I really didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. I just sat there in silence with tears streaming down my face, and in that moment I felt absolutely worthless because I couldn't even make my fucking mind up whether to die or not. I already felt as if I couldn't do anything right, and this was confirmation because I couldn't even kill myself properly. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a thought came into my mind, and I held on to it so tight. I literally felt as if I was being magnetised towards it. And that thought said, could I live with the thought of dying with regrets? So I asked myself that question. Could I live with the thought of dying with regrets? I asked it again and again and again. Could I live knowing full well that I hadn't even really tried to pull myself up and out of the ditch that I had dug myself? And the answer was no. For all these months I had been hoping that someone else was going to come and set me free. But the reality was that the only person who could have set me free was me. I started to look back on my life and all the crap I had already overcome. There and then, in that moment, it was as if a huge transition had shifted within my mind. I realised that I had been focusing on all of the negative things. So instead, I started to look around me at all the positive things which I currently had. I had a roof over my head, I had food in my fridge, I had clothes on my back, and I had shoes on my feet. I then realised that the nightmare I believed I was going through was in fact a dream for somebody else. Because there were so many people out there on that cold, hard concrete wishing that they could have traded places with me. I realised that I had been focusing on all of my perceived problems, and in return I was just attracting more of them towards me, because in life you get more of what it is that you focus on. So right, I'm going to stop it there, my friends, and we're going to catch up following forwards on the next live. So if you want to get yourself your hands on the wait list, or get yourself your hands on a copy of this book when it's released, get yourself on the wait list now, which is dyingwithregrets.ryannurse.com. Comment on this video or send me a DM on Instagram. Peace out, my friends. Goodbye.